what are some single-player games that you really enjoyed, had a great time with it, and was really polished experience, but unlike the popular ones out there, either it wasn't commercially successful or just flew under the radar, but gave you some decent hours of playtime? In my case, I have a few in mind, so if you've played almost all the mainstream popular games out there, then this video will hopefully help you find something different from the usual stuff. So let's look into it. Murdered Soul Suspect.
To bring him closer to the truth about his murder.
This game's really unique. You play as a guy named Ronan O'Connor, a cop in Salem, Massachusetts, and the game just throws you straight into it. The guy gets killed right at the start, so now you're a ghost. And yeah, being a ghost isn't just a gimmick, it actually changes everything. You can float through walls, peek into people's minds, possess objects, and it's all tied into how you figure out your own murder. The city is small, foggy, rainy most of the time, and it has that kind of spooky but not scary vibe. Like, you don't jump at shadows, but there's this constant feeling that stuff isn't right and you're stuck in it. What's fun is the way they handle the ghost mechanics. You aren't just running around being invisible, you actually have to think about how to use your abilities. Locked door, possess a crate. Someone hiding something, sneak into a nearby object. And it's cool because the game teaches you that slowly, so you feel clever when you finally figure it out. Some moments are kind of funny too, like when you're trying to possess an object but it's something stupid like a trash can or a dog toy and you're like, okay, this works too. The story is pretty heavy for a game like this. You're trying to solve your own murder, which is a weird feeling, and along the way you meet other ghosts with their own stories. Some are sad, some are angry, some are just stuck repeating their last moments. It gives the city some life, even though you're technically dead. Ronan himself is kinda tragic. He's this cop who always tried to do the right thing, and now he's powerless. You can feel the frustration in the way he reacts to stuff, and it makes the game more than just solve this mystery.
Ronan will acquire new and more powerful abilities.
Combat is basically non-existent, which might annoy some people, but honestly it works. The game is more about exploration and thinking, which is kinda rare for detective games. You're following clues, reading thoughts, chasing spirits, and it's paced slow enough that you don't feel rushed, but also not boring. Some puzzles are a little samey, but there are moments where you stumble across something that actually makes you go, oh, okay, that's clever. Honestly, it's underrated because it's not trying to be flashy. No big explosions, no open world, no grindy side quests. It's just a story and a few unique mechanics, and it pulls it off. The way you interact with the city as a ghost, the tiny details and side stories, and the weird mix of detective work and supernatural stuff makes it feel different from everything else. It's not perfect, some dialogue is cheesy, some mechanics are clunky, but if you like weird, story-heavy single-player games where the world is small but feels alive, this one's actually kind of a hidden gem. Lost Judgment. Lost Judgment is such a strange mix, in a way that actually works. You play as Yagami, the lawyer turned private detective guy, and the game opens with him diving into this high school related case. It's mostly bullying, fights, and some shady adults involved. The story isn't trying to crush your soul, it's more like following the detective through a bunch of weird, frustrating, sometimes ridiculous situations, and Yagami's reactions make it feel alive. The city is actually one of the best parts. Kamurocho and Ijincho feel like living places. People talk to each other, events happen in the streets, and if you wander, you'll see small interactions that feel organic. You could be tailing a suspect and notice a street performer, some kids arguing, or a guy trying to sell knockoff merchandise. It's small stuff, but it makes the city feel like it's breathing, not just a backdrop for missions. Combat is where Lost Judgment shines. Yagami has few fighting styles. One's smooth and technical, the other is rough and tumble brawling. You grab everything in the environment, pipes, signs, bottles, trash cans, and use it on enemies. Some fights are just one-on-one and fun because you can experiment with combos, but some are gang fights with like 10 people on the screen and it gets chaotic. I've had moments where I'm just dodging a crowd, swinging wildly, and somehow it works. The variety keeps it from getting repetitive, and switching styles mid-fight feels satisfying. Investigation sections are solid. You follow suspects, look through windows, check phones, talk to NPCs, read clues, and sometimes you have to connect dots in ways that feel clever. It's not brain melting, but it's not just holding your hand either. And honestly, those detective sections balance out the combat perfectly. After a long fight, you can slow down, tail someone, listen in on conversations, and it feels like proper detective work. The side content is ridiculous, but in a fun way. Drone racing, mini games, finding lost kids, optional fights, and weird little city events. None of it is forced. You can skip most of it, but it's there if you want to get distracted. I've spent hours just wandering the city, doing side missions, and laughing at the little absurdities the game throws at you. Like NPCs getting into arguments, or one kid asking you for help with some petty problem. The story itself is fine. Engaging, not too dark, not trying to be tragic life lesson heavy. Yagami interacts with high schoolers, adults, criminals, and the cases are messy, sometimes frustrating, sometimes funny. It keeps moving at a good pace. The game knows when to be serious and when to let you go off and do chaotic stuff in the city.
Watch this.
RoboCop Rogue City. Rogue City is one of those games where you immediately feel the vibe of being a walking, talking law machine, and it kind of nails that cybernetic cop energy. You're Alex Murphy, aka RoboCop, and the game throws you into Detroit, which is a city falling apart. Gangs, corruption, crime everywhere, neon lights, rainy streets, and you're supposed to clean it up. The story isn't super complicated, but it does a solid job of giving you motivation without wasting time. You're not just wandering around randomly, you're a cop on the clock, balancing human morality and robotic law enforcement, and the city responds to what you do. What's cool about this game is how it handles the RoboCop powers. You've got your classic targeting system, slow motion aiming, scanning for enemies, and punching or shooting people with authority. But it's not over the top arcadey, it feels grounded in the RoboCop world. Shooting is satisfying, the punches hit hard, and the way the game blends ranged and melee combat makes fights feel weighty. There's a lot of enemy variety too. Street gangs, private security, bigger baddies, so you're constantly switching tactics. The city itself is kind of a highlight. It's dense, neon lit, and full of little details that make it feel like a real place you're patrolling. People argue on the streets, stores get robbed, and random events happen while you're on your missions. Sometimes I just wandered a block and noticed a mini crime going down, jumped in, and felt like a true RoboCop. The verticality in alleyways make combat interesting too, like you can kick a thug off a ledge or punch someone into a stack of crates. It's messy, fun, and grounded in physics in a way that actually works. The story is solid, but not anything mind-blowing. It's mostly about crime in Detroit, a corporate conspiracy, and how far RoboCop can push the law while still trying to hold on to his humanity. There are moments where it hits that emotional RoboCop tone, Murphy remembering his human side, struggling with the rules, but it's not heavy-handed. It's enough to give the missions a little weight without slowing down the action. Side stuff is mostly optional, but it's fun. Patrolling the city, taking down small-time crimes, scanning environments, interrogating NPCs, it all adds layers to the world. And honestly, a lot of the joy comes from just experimenting with RoboCop's moves, kicking, shooting, or slowing down time to pick off a group of enemies strategically. There's a satisfying rhythm once you get into it. It's kind of underrated because it's not flashy like some AAA shooters, and a lot of people probably dismissed it for looking like a licensed game, but the world is solid, combat is weighty, missions are fun, and it nails the RoboCop vibe in a way that makes you feel like you are that cyborg cop walking through a city that's as chaotic and messy as he is. Some missions drag a little, some dialogue is cheesy, but overall, it's a really fun mix of detective-ish crime work and satisfying combat. Before your eyes.
That old Benny. It's Chloe. Your name.
Before Your Eyes hits you in a way that's kind of hard to explain unless you play it. You're not just moving a character around or shooting stuff. The whole game is about watching a life unfold in front of you, literally through your eyes. You control everything with your blinking, which sounds dumb when you first hear it, but it actually works. You blink to skip moments, to move the story forward, and it's super weird the first time because you have to think about your own physical reaction to the game. I actually caught myself blinking way too much at first and messing things up, and it's hilarious and frustrating at the same time. The story is what really sticks with you. You play as this guy who's died and is being taken through his life. All the highs, lows, random little moments that actually matter more than you'd think. You see relationships form, people you care about, things you screwed up, and sometimes just stupid little stuff that hits harder than it should. The way the game makes you reflect on memory and time is actually kind of genius. You blink, the moment's gone, and suddenly you're skipping through years of someone's life in seconds. It's weirdly emotional because you're in control and every blink feels like a choice.
Oh, sure. We sit together in history.
Mechanically, it's simple, but the simplicity is the point. You're not mashing buttons or solving puzzles, you're experiencing the story. The game throws you little interactions, some choices are hidden in how long you look at something, some in whether you blink or not. It keeps you on edge in a really subtle way. The blink mechanic actually makes you feel in the moment like you're living someone's life, which is wild for a game that otherwise feels like a visual novel crossed with a weird interactive diary. Visually, it's got this painterly storybook vibe that fits perfectly with the emotional tone. You're moving through memory, not real time, and the environments feel like snapshots of moments that stick. Lighting, music, small details, it all hits at the right time. Some scenes are funny, some sad, some just quietly touching, and you remember them because you were forced to pay attention in a way most games don't make you.
To start from the very beginning, I need you to remember. And just try to enjoy it this time.
Eriksholm, The Stolen Dream. So, Eriksholm, The Stolen Dream is a fairly recent game, came out in July 2025, and is basically an isometric stealth adventure game. It's made by a small team of 16 people called River and Games, and you can tell they put a ton of effort into it. The game takes place in a fictional Scandinavian city, Eriksholm, which feels like a mix of early 20th century Gothenburg and Stockholm. Streets, buildings, and the atmosphere all feel really deliberate and well thought out. You play as Hannah, an orphan who survives this plague called heartpox, and her brother Herman steals a cure to save her life. That kicks off the story, which quickly turns into a mix of conspiracy, shady politicians, rich business people, and some secret society stuff. You don't just play Hannah, you also get Alva, who can climb drain pipes, and Sebastian, who can swim, and switching between them is actually a big part of how you tackle missions. It's clever because each character skill feels useful, and the game encourages you to experiment with the three of them instead of doing everything the same way. The gameplay itself is classic stealth adventure. You sneak around, avoid being spotted, plan paths, and figure out how to complete objectives. The isometric perspective makes it easy to see everything and plan accordingly. If you get spotted, you restart a little before the incident, which is tense at first but ends up feeling fair. There are usually multiple ways to approach each mission, which keeps it from feeling repetitive. Eriksholm, the city, is probably the best part in terms of immersion. It's detailed without being crowded, you can see random events happen, and the streets feel alive. The visuals are Unreal Engine 5 level good, lighting and animations are solid, and the attention to detail makes the environment interesting even when you're just moving from one objective to the next. The story is decent, not overly emotional, not groundbreaking, just solid enough to make you care about what's happening. Political corruption, betrayals, and some moral questions pop up here and there, and it keeps you invested without dragging things down. The voice acting is good, soundtrack fits the mood, and the small details like how NPCs act or interact add a lot to the vibe. Overall, it's a niche game. Stealth fans, puzzle fans, or people who like small, detailed indie games will probably get the most out of it. It's not perfect. Some parts feel repetitive, some missions can be fiddly, but the mix of stealth, character switching, and city exploration makes it interesting in a way that a lot of isometric stealth games don't. Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush is this super energetic action game that mixes beat-based combat with hack-and-slash mechanics. You play as Chai, a regular guy who volunteers for this experiment that goes wrong, and as a result, he ends up with a cybernetic arm and this music player fused into his chest. That's the core gimmick. Everything in the game moves to the music. Your attacks, dodges, and combos literally sync to the beat, so timing isn't just cosmetic, it actually makes combat flow better. The story is mostly a fun, over-the-top setup. Chai is this sarcastic, kinda lazy guy who suddenly has to fight a bunch of corporate goons, crazy bosses, and the odd robot or two. It's not dark or emotional. It's loud, colorful, and full of personality. The writing is funny, the dialogue is full of jokes, and Chai reacts to situations in a very human way, which is nice because it makes you feel connected to him even though the story itself isn't super deep. Gameplay is where this game really shines. You can mash buttons and survive, but if you start syncing attacks to the rhythm, the combos flow naturally, you chain hits better, and boss fights feel satisfying instead of chaotic. You also get help from different partners during fights, each with unique abilities, which adds another layer of strategy. Switching between Chai and your partners feels smooth, and the bosses are designed so you actually have to pay attention, react, and sometimes even move around the arena to hit weak points on beat. Visually, the game is ridiculous in the best way. Neon colors, exaggerated character designs, crazy effects when you land combos, it all pops and matches the music perfectly. The environments are industrial but lively, and there's a lot of small details if you pay attention, like robots doing random tasks, hazards you can knock into enemies, or little visual cues that help you time attacks. It's not massive or open world, but it doesn't need to be. Everything is designed to support the rhythm combat, and that works really well. The music system is actually clever. It feels natural and rewarding rather than gimmicky. Hitting the beats gives you rhythm points, which can improve your attacks or fill your meter for special moves. It's satisfying when you start seeing combos build up and the music and combat start feeling like one thing instead of two separate systems. Bosses really push this system, forcing you to pay attention to timing and positioning while keeping the flow going. Vampyr. Vampyr is a game that definitely doesn't get enough credit, mostly because it's not a huge one, but it's got a lot going on if you pay attention. It came out in 2018 and was made by Dontnod, the same studio that did Life is Strange, so you can expect strong storytelling. The game is set in London right after World War I during the 1918 Spanish flu outbreak. The city feels sick and worn down. Streets are foggy, people are struggling to survive, and there's this constant feeling of tension and sadness. You play as Dr. Jonathan Reed, who's a proper doctor trying to help people, but then something happens and he becomes a vampire. So suddenly, you're balancing being a healer with being a predator, and that's what really makes the game stand out. Every choice you make has weight. If you feed on someone, that person dies, and it affects the entire district. Shops can close, rumors spread, and certain quests can vanish. You could spend time trying to cure people with medicine, or you could feed to get stronger quickly, but it comes at a real cost. The game forces you to think about morality in a way most games don't. You're not just picking dialogue options, you're deciding who lives and who dies, and that affects your character story and the city itself. Combat is simple at first, but it has depth. You use swords, daggers, and fists, plus vampire powers, like dashing, grappling, or teleporting behind enemies. Timing matters, dodging is key, and the powers let you mix up attacks in a way that keeps fights interesting without being overwhelming. It's not about grinding or crazy skill combos, it's about thinking strategically and using your abilities wisely. The game also has a very grounded story. Characters feel real, even small side characters. They have backstories, problems, and personalities, and sometimes their side quests are really small moments that stick with you emotionally. London itself is detailed without being overstuffed. It's atmospheric, but still playable. You can walk around, talk to people, and get little glimpses of life in a city recovering from war and disease. What makes Vampyr underrated is that it's not flashy. It doesn't have huge explosions, massive open worlds, or endless collectibles. It's a slow, thoughtful experience that relies on storytelling, world building, and choices. It's a game where your actions feel meaningful, and you can feel the consequences of every decision. It's also kind of sad in a human way. You feel conflicted because you want to save people, but you also have to survive, and that tension never really goes away. If you like story-driven games where your decisions actually matter, or games with a dark but realistic vibe, Vampyr is definitely worth checking out. It's not perfect. The combat can feel a little stiff, and some quests are repetitive, but the world, the story, and the moral choices make it stick in your mind long after you've stopped playing.
Submit to your hunger, and you, my child, their mortal enemy.
Ryse, son of Rome. Son of Rome is this cinematic action game where you play as Marius Titus, a Roman soldier caught up in this huge story about family, honor, and war. It originally came out on Xbox One in 2013 and later on PC, and even though people mostly remember it for its graphics, there's more going on than just eye candy. The game is basically a third-person hack and slash with a lot of cinematic presentation. Think big battlefields, huge armies, and a ton of cinematic cutscenes mixed with the action. The story itself is kinda simple, but it works with the game's style. Marius starts as a young soldier, sees his family killed by barbarians, and sets out on this revenge path while also rising through the ranks of the Roman army. It's not subtle. Characters yell a lot, speeches happen all over the place, and the dialogue is very much epic Roman drama. But that's the vibe the game is going for, and I can't hate it for that. You feel like you're part of a story that's larger than you, even if some moments are a little over the top. Gameplay is mostly about combat, and it's a bit more tactical than it looks at first. You've got sword combos, shield blocks, executions, and some light strategy when facing groups of enemies. Timing matters, especially for parries and counters. The executions are a big part of the flow. They're flashy, and they give the combat this rhythm to it that makes fights feel satisfying instead of just mashing buttons. There are also some sections with the bow, but it's really secondary. One thing that stands out is the scale. The battles feel huge, with dozens of enemies on screen, soldiers charging, and the occasional elephant or siege machine thrown in. Even though the game nudges you along a linear path most of the time, it still gives this feeling of being in a massive war. The environment, Roman forts, and battlefields are detailed and atmospheric, which helps sell the epic scale. Visually, it's probably what people remember most. CryEngine does a lot here. The lighting, the blood effects, the armor reflections, even the crowd animations are all solid for its time. It's not perfect. Some faces and expressions look a bit stiff, but overall it's impressive and still holds up better than a lot of other games from 2013. The story pacing can feel a bit forced at times, especially with all the cutscenes, but it keeps the focus on Marius and his personal journey rather than trying to overload you with politics or history lessons. There's a clear sense of progression. You go from a young soldier to a general, and the game makes you feel that growth through combat and story moments. The Wolf Among Us. The Wolf Among Us is this episodic adventure game that Telltale made back in 2013, and honestly, it still feels fresh if you like story-driven games. You play as Big B Wolf, yeah, the big bad wolf, but way older, grumpier, and now basically the sheriff of Fabletown, which is this hidden community of fairy tale characters living in New York. The whole vibe is dark, gritty, and noirish, like a detective story but with fairy tale characters. Snow, rain, dark alleys, it's moody, and the art style is comic booky, which really helps sell that vibe. The story is the heart of the game. Right away, you get pulled into a murder investigation, but it's not just about solving a crime. The people you're dealing with, Snow White, Bloody Mary, all these classic characters have personalities, agendas, and secrets. Some of them are nice, some are shady, some will straight up lie to you. Bigby isn't exactly a good guy. He's gruff, rough around the edges, and sometimes violent, which makes the dialogue and choices feel real. You're constantly thinking about who to trust, how to handle situations, and what kind of Bigby you actually want to be. Gameplay is mostly point-and-click adventure, with dialogue choices and a few quick-time events during fights. It's not about combat skill, it's about decisions and pacing. Choices feel meaningful. Someone lives, a character gets scared off, or a story branch changes later, and it doesn't always spell out the consequences immediately, which is cool. Some people hate that there's not much traditional gameplay, but honestly, the way Telltale structures it makes you feel like you're part of a real story rather than just completing objectives.
This whole time! Listen to your wife.
The episodic format works here because it gives you time to think about your choices and reflect on the story. Each episode ends in a way that keeps you guessing, and sometimes you're left with morally gray situations where you don't really feel like there's a right answer. Bigby's personality plus the dialogue options make you feel like you're actively shaping who he is over time. Art-wise, the game nails it. The cel-shaded comic book style is perfect for the setting. It's not just pretty, it adds to the tone. Rain-soaked streets, smoky bars, dark offices, is, every scene feels like it's part of a bigger, lived-in world. The sound design and music also pull you in. It's subtle but effective, keeps the tension up, and complements the noir vibe. The Wolf Among Us is definitely niche. If you're expecting action or fast gameplay, this isn't it. But if you like stories, characters, and choice-driven drama, it's fantastic. Some of the side mysteries and conversations are surprisingly memorable, and even small characters feel real. It's messy, morally gray, and really invests you in this world of fairy tale people trying to survive in a harsh modern city.
He's had enough.
Titanfall 2. But seriously, the one game that got completely messed up by a bad release date, it is this one. That's the most important thing to know about it. The company that made it, EA, decided to launch it right in between Battlefield 1 and the Call of Duty game, which were like the two biggest shooters that year. Everyone was busy playing those, and this amazing game just got totally overlooked when it came out. That's why it's on this list. But seriously, the single player story in this game is way better than it has any right to be. You play as a guy named Jack Cooper, who's just a normal rifleman, but he gets stuck with this giant smart robot, a Titan named BT-7274. Titans are basically huge walking tanks that can talk. The whole game is built around the relationship between Jack and BT. It's like a buddy cop movie, but one of the cops is a 20-foot tall machine who takes everything you say super literally. Their dialogue is actually funny and gives the story a lot of heart, which you just don't expect from a big, fast-paced shooter. Now, the gameplay is what makes it a must play. When you're running around as Jack, you're super fast. You can do all this cool parkour, like double jumping and sprinting across walls, and it feels incredibly smooth. It's like a completely different game from when you are inside BT. When you're in the Titan, the combat is heavy, loud, and powerful. You can switch between these two styles of play instantly, and the level design constantly makes you swap back and forth. You might have to jump out of BT, wall run across a giant gap, clear a small area of enemies, and then find a way to get back to your Titan.
Mark it on your HUD.
And listen up, there's one level in this game that is just legendary. It's called Effect and Cause. In this level, you get a special piece of gear that lets you time travel instantly between the past and the present. You are literally jumping back and forth to solve puzzles and fight enemies. 1 second you're fighting bad guys in a clean, working factory, and the next second you hit a button and you're in the same exact spot, but it's totally ruined, overgrown with plants, and full of different enemies. It's a totally clever mechanic that only lasts for that one section, and it shows how much effort they put into making the campaign feel fresh and different all the time. So forget the fact that it sold poorly at launch. The campaign is short, but every single minute is packed with cool ideas and amazing action. You just gotta experience that bond with BT for yourself. It's seriously a solid, well-made shooter.
I will not lose another pilot. Got you.
Plague Tale Requiem. A Plague Tale Requiem is a great example of a story-driven game that got overlooked because it came out at the same time as huge hits like God of War Ragnarok and Elden Ring. Even though it didn't get as much attention, it's one of the most visually stunning and emotionally intense single-player games in recent years. The game is way more than its rat game nickname. It's an emotional roller coaster with a deeply personal story. You follow Amicia and her little brother Hugo, two kids surviving a terrifying medieval world. This time, the stakes are much bigger. What happens isn't just local, it affects the whole world. The story's darker, showing how the events of the first game have changed them. Amicia isn't just protecting Hugo anymore. She's traumatized, angry, and struggling to control her violent side. That inner struggle makes the story feel mature and real, showing how desperation can lead to harsh choices that even hurt the people you love. Gameplay has also gotten a big upgrade. The world is huge, from busy coastal towns to sunny ruins and lush islands, giving you more ways to sneak around or fight. Amicia now has a crossbow, a knife for close fights, and new alchemy tools like tar that can light up rats or burn enemies. You can play quietly and avoid killing, or go full-on violent. It's your choice. The game even subtly rewards how you play, improving your stealth skills if you sneak, or boosting combat if you fight. But the real showstopper is the rats. rats. Watching huge waves of them pour through a city square or erupt from the ground is jaw-dropping and impossible to fully capture in videos or screenshots. Hugo's power, the macula, is stronger too. He can sense enemies through walls with a new echo ability, or in extreme moments, control the rat swarms to destroy everything in their path.
You need more rats! Hugo! Oh no! No!
Singularity. Singularity is this first-person shooter that came out in 2010, and honestly, it's one of those games people kind of forget even existed, which is a shame because it actually does some interesting stuff. You play as Captain Nathaniel Renko, a US soldier sent to this mysterious Russian island called Katorga 12, and the story immediately hits you with this mix of Cold War vibes, time experiments, and sci-fi twists. The island was the site of secret experiments with this substance called E99 that messes with time, and of course, things have gone horribly wrong. The thing that makes this game unique is the time manipulation. You get this device called the TMD, Temporal Manipulation Device, which lets you do stuff like aging or reverting objects and enemies. You can take a broken down bridge and make it whole again, or make a freshly repaired door crumble. Enemies, you can age them until they die instantly or revert their armor to make it weaker. It's a mechanic that's actually really fun once you start experimenting. You're not just shooting and running, you're thinking about how to use time itself to solve problems and survive fights. The combat is solid, typical shooter style, but the TMD gives it that extra layer of strategy. You still have guns, grenades, and melee, but mixing them with time powers makes fights more interesting. I've spent entire sections just playing around with objects, making barrels old, then blowing them up, or freezing a turret mid-fire. It's clever because it turns a standard FPS into something a bit more tactical and unpredictable. The story and setting are pretty solid too. Katorga 12 feels like a real creepy abandoned island, with labs, military bases, and weird experiments lying everywhere. There's this constant tension. It's eerie but not horror level scary. You get little notes and recordings that flesh out the backstory, and the characters feel more grounded than a lot of shooters from that time. Renko is a straightforward protagonist, but the island and its mysteries carry most of the weight, and that works because exploring is satisfying. The game also does a good job of pacing. You'll have intense combat sections, then slower moments to explore, use the TMD creatively, or figure out a puzzle. None of it drags too long, and the story keeps you curious about what's really going on with the time experiments. The bosses aren't huge in number, but the TMD gives them a unique twist, because you can't just gun them down. You have to use time in clever ways to survive. Visually, it's dated now, but back then, it was pretty solid. The environments are detailed and varied. Frozen labs, crumbling military bases, forests on the island, and the design really helps sell the time manipulation mechanics. Sound and music fit the tone too. Tense, moody, sci-fi tinged without ever feeling overbearing. Singularity doesn't try to reinvent shooters, but it takes the genre and adds one really strong, unique mechanic that keeps it interesting. It's not perfect. Some guns feel generic, and the story isn't mind-blowing, but the time powers make it memorable, and the way you can manipulate objects and enemies adds replay value. It's a shooter that rewards experimentation, and for anyone who likes a mix of action and clever mechanics, it's definitely worth checking out. Quantum Break. Quantum Break is one of those games that came out at the wrong time and got buried, even though it was doing way more interesting stuff than most big games around it. It dropped in 2016 when Xbox One was busy trying to be a TV box instead of a game console, so a lot of people just brushed it off without even trying it. But if you look at what Remedy did here, it's basically a mix of a full single-player action game and a live-action show that reacts to your choices, and not in a gimmicky way. You play as Jack Joyce, and the story kicks off with a time travel experiment at this tech facility. It goes bad instantly, and instead of the typical you have slow-mo powers now thing, the whole world starts to break apart. Time literally stutters, freezes, skips, and chunks of the environment just stop working normally. The game builds that into everything: combat, movement, level design, even cutscenes. The time powers are actually fun to use instead of feeling like a cheap superpower add-on. You can freeze a group of enemies and unload bullets into the bubble, circle so it all hits at once, or dash across the map while everyone else is basically paused. There's a shield, a time blast, and this blink-style dodge that makes fun fights feel more about movement than hiding behind cover. It keeps combat from getting stale since you're not stuck doing the same two actions over and over. The live-action episodes are what made people ignore the game, but they're better than they sounded in trailers. Remedy filmed them with real actors from shows like Game of Thrones, The Wire, X-Men movies, and it isn't just random side story stuff. At the end of some chapters, you get these junction points where you pick how certain events go, and the TV episode that plays after changes based on that choice. It sounds weird until you actually play it, then it just feels like another way the story reacts to you. And even outside the time powers, the world looks and feels different. Buildings freeze mid-collapse, cars float in midair, objects rewind and glitch out, and the game doesn't just use that as background, you walk through it while it's happening. It gives the game its own identity. It's not a full open world, but each area feels like it has purpose, and the pacing doesn't waste your time with pointless filler. The reason it ended up underrated had nothing to do with quality. Xbox didn't know how to market it, people were already annoyed by the TV push, and it didn't get ported to other platforms at launch, so it got forgotten even though it plays great and still holds up visually and mechanically. If you like story-driven single-player games with actual production value, Quantum Break is one of those titles people skipped for no real reason. It's one of Remedy's most experimental games and easily deserves more eyes on it. House of Ashes. House of Ashes is one of those horror games that keeps things tense from start to finish without wasting your time. The whole story takes place in Iraq, where a squad of American soldiers and one Iraqi officer end up trapped underground after a mission goes wrong. They fall into these ancient ruins buried under the desert, and that's where everything starts going bad. The game isn't just about jump scares. It builds its tension around the characters being stuck in a place they don't understand. There are tunnels, tombs, old carvings, hidden chambers, and you never really feel safe. The more they explore, the more they realize something else is down there with them, and it's not human. That's when the survival side kicks in. Gameplay is cinematic with quick-time events, choices, and character moments. You switch between different characters as things get worse, and the way you respond decides who makes it out. There's no filler exploration. Every section pushes the story forward. The creatures you deal with aren't random ghosts or cheap horror monsters either. They feel physical and dangerous, and once you get a good look at them, the panic hits harder. The characters don't start off liking each other, but the situation forces them to work together. Some characters can actually build respect if you play it a certain way, and some can get killed off fast if you mess up. It keeps every scene tense, because one wrong move ends someone's story. Visually, the underground setting is the best part. It's dark, dusty, and tight, with just enough lighting to make you feel like something could jump out at any second. The sound design helps a lot too. Footsteps, echoes, and that creepy silence right before something goes wrong. House of Ashes is one of the better horror choices if you want a game that's short and tense and story focused. It doesn't try too hard to be complicated. It's about being trapped in the dark with something hunting you, and that's enough to carry the whole experience. Life is Strange 2.
Things were different, but we can't go back.
Life is Strange 2 starts in a regular neighborhood with two brothers just living a normal life. Nothing supernatural, nothing crazy, just school, friends, and family stuff. Then something sudden happens in their area that forces them to leave home and hit the road with almost nothing. From that point on, the whole game becomes a journey across different parts of America. That setup alone makes it different from the first game, because you're always moving instead of being stuck in one town. The story isn't told through some chosen one angle. It's more about survival, build trust, and how two brothers handle the world when they don't have a home to go back to. Daniel, the younger brother, is the one with powers this time, but you're not the one using them. You're Sean, the older brother, and your behavior decides how Daniel uses those powers later. That's a unique twist that most players didn't expect, because it's less about controlling abilities and more about shaping someone who has them. The game is underrated mainly because people expected Max and Chloe again, and when they realized it was a new cast with a more serious tone, they just dipped. But this one goes bigger with locations and situations. One episode you're in the woods trying to stay hidden, another you're around drifters and travelers, then you're in small towns, deserts, rural farms. It doesn't sit in one place too long. It feels like a road movie where you meet new people, make choices, and every area has its own problems.
Stop, Daniel.
Bless you have.
Gameplay is still choice-based, but it has more weight because you're not just choosing for yourself. You're thinking about how your little brother sees you. Sometimes you have to decide if you're going to steal to survive or try to do things the right way, and Daniel remembers that. That changes how he reacts later, and it changes the ending. The game doesn't get enough credit for how it handles quiet moments too. Cooking, drawing, sitting by a fire, staying in broken down houses, working random jobs. It makes the whole trip feel real instead of staged. And because you're always on the move, the world feels bigger compared to most narrative games. Life is Strange 2 may not be as loud or meany as the first one, but if you actually give it a shot, it's one of the most grounded story games out there. It deserved more attention than it got.
Crush on me or something?
Got ya!
Daniel?
Leave me alone!
Do it, Daniel! Now!
Mafia Series. The Mafia series is one of those story-driven crime game collections that never gets enough credit. Each game drops you into a different era of organized crime in America, but the way it tells the story is what makes it stick. You're not just running around in a city doing random jobs. Every mission has weight, and the world feels alive around you. In the first game, you start as Tommy Angelo, a regular cab driver who somehow ends up working for the Salieri crime family. The gameplay mixes driving, shooting, and stealth in a way that's smooth and cinematic, and the city itself feels real. Streets, neighborhoods, nightclubs, and alleys all look like they could exist in the 1930s. Driving is a big part of it, and it's not just for show. Car chases feel tense, and handling the older cars actually takes some skill. Mafia 2 jumps forward to the 1940s and 50s, and you play as Vito Scaletta. This one leans harder into story and characters, showing how Vito climbs up the criminal world. The missions are structured like a movie. Some are quiet and tense, some explode into big shootouts. The city is full of detail. Diners, jazz clubs, neon signs, factories, snow-covered streets in winter. You also see how crime affects everyday life. Families, neighbors, even people on the street react to the mob differently. The driving and shooting mechanics feel tighter here, and it mixes in stealth and planning missions that keep things varied.
Started a fucking war.
Mafia 3 is a different beast. Set in New Bordeaux in the late 60s, inspired by New Orleans, you play as Lincoln Clay, a Vietnam vet trying to take revenge on the mob. The story is darker, and the city has its own personality with jazz, swamp areas, and a very real feeling of racial tension in the time period. Gameplay is more open world than the first two, but it still focuses on story and character interaction. You plan attacks on rival gangs, recruit allies, and see the consequences of your choices across the city. Across all three games, the series nails one thing: feeling like you're part of a living, breathing criminal world. You're not just completing objectives, you're living in a specific time and place with the fashion, cars, music, and slang to match. That kind of attention to detail, combined with cinematic storytelling and a mix of driving, shooting, and strategic planning, is why the series still stands out. The Mafia games are underrated because a lot of people dismiss them as just another crime game, but they're really story-first experiences that happen to let you drive fast cars and shoot bad guys. Each entry is unique in its era and gameplay style, and if you enjoy narrative-heavy single-player games where your actions feel meaningful, the Mafia series is definitely worth checking out. Sleeping Dogs. This game puts you in Hong Kong as Wei Shen, a cop who's gone undercover in one of the city's biggest triad families. Right away, you realize it's not a typical open-world crime game. The city feels so packed and gritty compared to the usual games set in the West. There are people everywhere, vendors shouting, cars honking, scooters weaving through traffic. Even just walking down the street feels so immersive. That's part of what makes exploration so satisfying. Also, combat here in Sleeping Dogs hits way differently than most games. You're not just mashing buttons, it's hand-to-hand martial arts, and the game gives you ways to chain attacks, counter punches, grab enemies, throw them into walls or tables, even use environmental objects like bottles or chairs. Every fight can feel cinematic if you do it right. Guns are in the game too, but the main satisfaction comes from the fighting. You're constantly switching between shooting, punching, and chasing enemies, and because each mission throws in new situations, like multiple enemies, tight corridors, or gangsters with knives, it doesn't ever feel repetitive. Driving here actually matters. Streets aren't wide highways. They're narrow, messy, crowded, and full of random chaos. Chases feel tense because you have to dodge cars, avoid pedestrians, and sometimes fight enemies while driving. The vehicles handle differently too, so a fast sports car isn't the same as a beat-up sedan. You get a real sense of moving through the city, not just getting from point A to B. Then there's the story and characters. Wei's struggle between being a cop and being accepted by the Triad is constant. Some missions are small, like helping a local merchant or doing a simple favor for someone, and some are massive, like full-on shootouts or escaping enemies while carrying out orders. The choices you make in side missions don't always matter on a huge scale, but they make the city feel reactive. People remember you, and the relationships Wei built can affect later moments. The side stuff is surprisingly rewarding. Street races, gambling, mini-games like karaoke, exploring back alleys, taking photos, all of it makes the world feel bigger. Even little missions like stopping a street fight or chasing someone down on foot make the city feel like it exists beyond the main story. You get the feeling that everything is happening for a reason, not just filler. Sleeping Dogs is underrated because people lump it in with GTA and think it's just a clone, but it isn't. The combat, the city, the martial arts, the emotional stakes in the story, and the way it mixes narrative with open world freedom, all of that gives it its own identity. It's chaotic at times, tense at times, and still has these quiet human moments where you just ride around the city or sit down and watch the world go by. If you've never played it, it's one of those games that sticks with you because it actually feels like a living place you're part of. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. The game drops you right into the middle of a bunch of chaos with the Guardians. You're Star-Lord trying to lead this crew of misfits across space while everything is falling apart around you. Rocket is loud, sarcastic, always complaining about everything. Groot barely talks but does his own thing. Drax doesn't get jokes, and Gamora is just trying to keep everyone alive while you're yelling orders. The thing is, they all feel alive. They fight on their own sometimes, mess up, or argue with each other, and that makes every fight and cutscene feel unpredictable. Fights are fast, but you have to think a little. You shoot with Star-Lord's blasters, dodge enemy attacks, and at the same time, you can tell the team to do specific moves. Rocket blows stuff up, Groot can slam or block, Drax charges in and wrecks, and Gamora moves super fast and precise. Timing is everything, because if you don't coordinate well, enemies overwhelm you, and sometimes just watching them do their own thing makes it funny or scary. There's also a lot of environmental stuff, walls, boxes, switches that you can use in fights. Outside the action, the story and conversations are the highlight. The crew constantly bickers, jokes, insults each other, and argue about the stupidest stuff, but it makes the world feel alive. Every choice you make in conversations changes how they react. If you're mean, they get annoyed or sarcastic. If you're nice, they actually listen more. You don't see massive branching stories, but little changes in relationships make it feel personal. And the emotional beats hit because these characters have pasts, worries, and secrets, so when something serious happens, it actually lands. Exploring the world is fun. You go to different planets, space stations, and cities. Some places are shiny and futuristic, others are dark, abandoned, or filled with alien life. Every location has hidden conversations, collectibles, or little jokes you can trigger. It's not just running from mission to mission. You spend time listening to the team, walking around, discovering stuff, and laughing at the weird situations that come up. And the soundtrack is perfect. All the 80s music Star-Lord loves fits every moment, from fights to quiet scenes, giving everything a goofy, emotional energy.
Rejecting the promise, you have proven yourselves unworthy, and you must be destroyed!
Evil West. Evil West is this wild mix of western shootouts and monster hunting, and it somehow works better than you'd expect. You play as Jesse, a vampire hunter working for a secret organization in the Old West. The world feels like a dusty, lawless frontier city with mines, saloons, abandoned towns, and creepy forests, but everything has this dark, supernatural twist. One minute you're riding through a canyon, the next you're surrounded by monsters that shouldn't exist. The combat is what keeps you hooked. Jesse has guns, melee weapons, and powers that let you zip around and hit enemies in flashy ways. You can dodge, parry, and chain combos between guns and punches, and the game actually makes you feel badass when it works. Enemies are fast and aggressive, so fights feel alive. You don't just shoot from cover the whole time, you're running, flipping over barrels, punching monsters into walls, and using your powers to grab or toss them. Sometimes you're swarmed by smaller enemies, sometimes it's a single huge boss, and both feel intense in different ways. Exploration isn't huge like an open world, but the environments are fun to move through. Abandoned towns have secret rooms, hidden loot, and side enemies that keep you on your toes. The level design makes it feel like you're always in the thick of it, with verticality, hazards, and stuff you can use in fights. Riding through open deserts or inside mines gives the game a cinematic vibe, like you're in a western movie mixed with a horror story. What makes it unique is how it mixes western themes with over-the-top supernatural stuff. You've got bandits, gunslingers, and cowboys, but then you throw in giant monsters, vampires, and weird experiments. It's chaotic, but still grounded enough that it feels like you're in this world for a reason. The story doesn't get bogged down with unnecessary details. It moves fast, introduces interesting characters, and keeps pushing you forward without feeling repetitive. The Saboteur. The Saboteur throws you into Nazi-occupied Paris as Sean Devlin, an Irish race car driver turned resistance fighter, and the game instantly has this mix of danger, freedom, and style. Paris is huge, full of streets, rooftops, alleys, and hidden corners, and it feels alive. Civilians walk around like life is going on, soldiers patrol, cars drive through narrow streets, and you can climb, jump, and sneak through almost anywhere. At first, the city is gray and oppressive, showing the Nazi control, but as you do missions, liberate districts, and take out key targets, color slowly comes back. Buildings, streets, even shops light up with life again, and it makes your actions feel like they actually matter instead of just being a checklist. Missions are a mix of stealth, sabotage, driving, and combat. You can sneak along rooftops, hide behind crates and barrels, quietly take out guards, or run in guns blazing if you want chaos. There are explosives, pistols, rifles, and melee weapons, but the game rewards creativity. Sometimes it's better to lure a group of soldiers into a trap, blow up a fuel truck, or cut off a patrol path than just shoot your way through. Climbing and parkour is huge. You can leap between rooftops, swing from scaffolding, or scale walls to get behind enemy lines. It feels smooth and natural, and using the vertical spaces in Paris gives missions a different dimension than most open-world stealth games. Driving is another big part. You steal cars, motorcycles, or even trucks to get around quickly or chase down targets. The streets are narrow and often full of obstacles, so high-speed chases feel tense and chaotic. Sometimes you're dodging Nazi patrols, sometimes you're rushing to escape an area after a sabotage mission, and it keeps the pace varied. The story gives Sean reasons to fight beyond just patriotism. He's out for revenge against the Nazis who killed his friend, but he also joins the French resistance and slowly helps free the city. You meet different resistance members, each with their own personalities and missions. Some missions are quiet sabotage or intelligence gathering, others are full-blown action with heavy firefights, and the mix keeps you engaged. The game also has humor. Sean's sarcastic personality and the way he talks to allies or enemies adds life to every scene. The design of Paris itself is something that sticks with you. Landmarks, small streets, slums, and open plazas all feel connected. You can climb up the Eiffel Tower, hide in dark alleys, jump from rooftops into courtyards, and the freedom makes exploration fun. The districts are different too. Some are heavily patrolled, others are more open, and you can choose how to approach missions depending on your style. The Saboteur is underrated because it doesn't have the same polish or hype as Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty, but it gives you freedom, vertical movement, creative combat, and a city that reacts to what you do. It blends stealth, action, driving, and parkour in a way that makes you feel like a real part of this occupied world. Watching Paris slowly come back to life as you liberate areas is surprisingly satisfying, and every mission has its own mix of tension, fun, and chaos. If you play it today, it still feels unique compared to most open world games, and that's why it deserves more attention.
There's our man now.
Hitman Absolution. Absolution didn't get love when it first came out. Fans of the old Hitman games were upset because it felt more cinematic and story-driven than the pure sandbox stealth the series was known for. Some people hated the tighter levels, the checkpoints, and the way disguises and stealth were slightly more limited. At first, it seemed like it lost the freedom that made the older games special, but over time, people started appreciating it for what it really is: a tense, smart, cinematic stealth game with some of the best level design in the series. You play as Agent 47, and this time it's personal. He's protecting someone while dealing with enemies from his past, which makes the story more urgent than just kill the target. The game mixes stealth, planning, and some action sequences. You can sneak, hide bodies, distract guards, or go loud if you want, but most of the fun comes from finding creative ways to complete your objectives. Poison drinks, drop chandeliers, set up accidents, use sniper rifles, or silently take out enemies and hide their bodies. Every level has multiple solutions. Watching a plan come together is super satisfying. The disguises are important too. Wearing the right clothes lets you blend in, access restricted areas, or get close to targets. Civilians and guards act realistically, so you have to pay attention to patterns and timing. The world feels alive, with crowded streets, hotels, factories, and warehouses that all feel different but believable. There's a lot of verticality and interaction with objects. You can use almost anything in the environment to your advantage. The story and levels make it feel cinematic without losing that classic Hitman satisfaction. Some missions have intense escapes or action sequences, but the game rewards patience and creativity more than raw skill. Over time, people realize that while it's different from the older Hitman games, it nails tension, planning, and creativity in ways the earlier entries didn't. The tight, focused levels make your decisions feel meaningful, and the cinematic tone makes the story stick in your head. Now, Absolution is looked at as a classic by many players. It might not be everyone's favorite Hitman, but it's unique in the series for its mix of story, tense stealth, and creative gameplay. What was hated at launch for being too different is now praised for giving the series personality and memorable levels that still hold up.
Looking good.
Road 96. Road 96 is a game about escaping a country on the brink of collapse, and you don't just play as one character, you play as different teenagers, each with their own reasons for running, their own personalities, and their own ways of dealing with the challenges on the road. Every run feels different depending on who you pick, who you meet, and what choices you make along the way. You might hitch a ride with a friendly truck driver in one run, or end up getting chased by the police in another. The game makes you feel like you're really part of a living, breathing world where your decisions details matter. The journey itself is the focus. You travel through deserts, forests, mountains, small towns, and highways. Some places feel quiet and lonely with just the wind or a passing car, and others feel alive with markets, colorful streets, or small groups of people doing their own thing. The game doesn't hold your hand. You have to decide where to go, when to take risks, and who to trust. Every conversation can change what happens next, and even tiny decisions ripple through the story in ways that feel meaningful.
Okay, let's go. There's a psycho after.
The gameplay is simple but tense. You hitch rides, sneak past police checkpoints, talk to strangers, or just explore the environment. You make choices constantly, sometimes moral, sometimes just practical. Do you take a risky shortcut through a dangerous forest, or stick to the main road where the cops might catch you? Do you trust a stranger who offers you a ride, or play it safe and walk? The game mixes moments of quiet exploration with sudden tension, like being chased, trapped, or running out of time. Because the encounters are randomized, every run keeps you on your toes. One of the coolest parts of Road 96 is how the multiple character stories overlap. You start seeing threads that connect the runs, people you meet, events that repeat in different ways, and consequences that affect other characters. It's subtle but satisfying, like the world is bigger than just one journey. That makes the game feel alive and layered. The story is about more than just escaping. It's about survival, hope, and the people you meet. Some characters are cynical, others desperate, some just lucky, and each run shows a different perspective on the country and its problems. The game does a great job of telling emotional and personal stories without dragging things out or being overly dramatic. You feel the weight of the world, but there are also small moments of humor or kindness that make it feel human.
And their journeys have only just begun. Each decision could shape your destiny and Petria's too.
Max Payne 3. Max Payne 3 is smooth, satisfying, and a really solid entry in the series. You play as Max in Brazil, working security for a rich family, and the gameplay is all about moving, shooting, and using bullet time in clever ways. The shooting feels heavy and responsive, and the way you can dive, dodge, and line up perfect shots makes every fight feel rewarding. The cover system works well too. You're constantly moving between walls, crates, and corners, which keeps you on your toes without ever feeling frustrating. The story is darker and more personal than the older games. Max is older, tired, and full of regrets, which makes the missions feel more grounded. He's not this unstoppable hero. He's a guy who's struggling to survive while dealing with messy, dangerous situations. That struggle makes every fight, chase, or encounter feel meaningful. The writing keeps some of the series' classic noir style, with Max's thoughts giving humor, sarcasm, and personality in a way that makes you feel connected to him. The missions are varied enough that you never get bored. Some levels are straight up firefights, some involve sneaking through buildings or tight areas, and some have chase sequences that keep the pace exciting. The game balances action with moments where you just need to plan, move carefully, or figure out the best way to handle a group of enemies. That mix makes it feel like more than just a shooter. It feels like you're really in Max's world. What makes Max Payne 3 underrated is that the series as a whole never got the attention it deserves. When it came out, some people expected the same old New York grit or complained that the story was too cinematic. But over time, people realize it's a game that's fun to play, satisfying to master, and full of memorable combat and moments. Max Payne 3 refined the series' core mechanics, told a personal and intense story, and still has some of the best bullet time action in gaming. It's not flashy or overhyped, but it's the kind of game you remember because it just works, and it's a perfect mix of action, story, and strategy. Even years later, it still holds up. The shooting, the pacing, the way you move through levels, everything feels tight. If you enjoy action games where you can think, plan, and pull off cool moves while feeling every hit, Max Payne 3 is one of the best examples, and it's definitely a part of the series that deserves more recognition. X-Men Origins Wolverine. X-Men Origins Wolverine was a really nice game that didn't get a lot of attention when it first came out. It kinda flew under the radar, but over time, people started appreciating it more, and now it's remembered fondly as a fun, brutal action game. Playing as Wolverine just feels right. You're fast, strong, and nearly unstoppable. The combat is simple to get into, but satisfying to master. You can chain attacks, slash through multiple enemies, grab people and throw them into walls, or use your claws to break objects around you. Every fight feels messy and chaotic in a good way, which matches Wolverine's personality perfectly. The game doesn't waste time. Levels are varied enough to keep it interesting. You go through military bases, secret labs, jungles, and small towns, and each area has a mix of enemies and challenges. Some parts let you sneak around, hiding and taking enemies out quietly, while other moments encourage you to just charge in and wreck everything in sight. Boss fights and tougher enemies make you think about how to approach them, so even though the game is mostly about fun, fast action, it still has some tension. Wolverine's healing factor makes the gameplay satisfying too. You can take hits and keep going, which encourages you to be aggressive and experiment with combos. You feel like a real mutant tearing through waves of enemies, and the way the game balances health and power makes every encounter feel good. The story is minimal but works. You get a glimpse into Wolverine's past, his conflicts, and his enemies, but it never slows down the action. It's all about feeling like Wolverine and making the most of your powers.
Lab 3.
Telltale Tales from the Borderlands. Telltale's Tales from the Borderlands is one of those games that's super fun but doesn't get enough attention. When it came out, people mostly looked at it as just another Telltale game, but it's way more than that. It's funny, clever, and has a story that actually keeps you hooked. You play as a few different characters, switching between them as the story goes on. Each character has their own personality, and the way their stories intertwine makes the game feel alive and unpredictable. The gameplay is classic Telltale style. You make choices, explore environments, and do some quick-time events, but the writing is what really shines. The humor is sharp and often ridiculous in the best way. The characters say the stuff you want to hear in a Borderlands game, snarky, sarcastic, over the top. The dialogue choices actually feel meaningful because your actions change how other characters react and, in the end, influence the story. It's not just a linear story. Your decisions shape the outcomes in small but satisfying ways.
This scam was our biggest yet.
What makes it underrated is that it came out right when people were tired of Telltale games or expecting big action titles. But Tales from the Borderlands is one of the funniest and most clever games in the series. The animation, voice acting, and comedic timing all work together to make it feel like you're actually in the Borderlands world. You get the same crazy guns, weird characters, and chaotic vibe of the main Borderlands games, but with a story that's smarter and funnier than most spin-offs. Even though it's a narrative game, it doesn't feel slow. Every episode keeps you moving with plot twists, ridiculous situations, and moments that make you laugh out loud. It's a game that's better remembered now than when it first came out because people realize it's clever, funny, and full of personality. Tales from the Borderlands shows that narrative games can be exciting, entertaining, and genuinely memorable without needing huge battles or complicated mechanics.
Why all of a sudden?
Beyond Two Souls. Beyond Two Souls is a single-player story game that follows one character through different stages of her life. But the twist is, you're not playing alone. The main character is Jodie, and she's connected to a spirit named Aiden that you can also control. From the start, she isn't living a normal life. She's taken in by researchers because of her connection to this invisible presence, and that shapes everything that happens to her. The game jumps between different ages, like when she's a kid being tested in a lab, when she's a runaway, when she's in military operations, and when she's just trying to live without being controlled. It's not random. Each part shows how being tied to Aiden affects her relationships and choices. The gameplay lets you switch between Jodie and Aiden at certain moments. Aiden can move through walls, push objects, choke enemies, spy on people, or protect Jodie when things get bad. That alone makes the game different from the usual story-driven stuff since you're playing as both the person dealing with life and the thing attached to her. What makes it stand out is the range of situations. One chapter is survival in the streets, another is a CIA mission, then a desert reservation, then a party where things go wrong. It keeps moving without dragging anything out. Choices matter too, not just in dialogue, but in how you handle those situations with Aiden. Some characters live or die based on how you act, and the ending changes a lot depending on what you decide across the story. People don't talk about it much now, because it released at a time when heavy story games weren't popular like they are today, and critics focus too hard on the structure instead of the gameplay ideas. But it's one of the few games where you're not just reacting, you're living through someone's entire life while also controlling a force nobody else can see.
Titans World? So tired. I'll tell you, Nathan.
Drova, Forsaken Kin. So this pixel art action RPG draws inspiration from the grimdark classics and the mystical allure of Celtic mythology. You play as a nameless wanderer in a fractured, dangerous world where spirits control nature and different factions are constantly fighting for power. The game doesn't guide you much, which makes exploring it feel personal. You choose where to go, who to fight, and which paths to take, and every decision can affect what happens later. Combat is one of the game's strongest points. It's challenging but extremely satisfying. You can swing weapons, use powers granted by spirits, and chain attacks into combos that feel impactful. Some fights require careful timing and positioning, while others let you unleash raw, destructive power. The game rewards creativity, so using the environment to take out enemies or combining spirit powers with weapons can completely change how a battle plays out. Exploration is just as rewarding as combat. The world is filled with secrets, hidden paths, and small encounters that can give you powerful items, reveal parts of the story, or change how factions react to you. The open world design means you can go off the beaten path and stumble into situations you weren't expecting, and those moments make the game feel alive. You'll move through forests, ruins, and settlements, each area with its own dangers and surprises. Some zones are packed with enemies that require careful strategy to survive, while others encourage stealth and patience. The game also does a great job of making the world feel dynamic. The choices you make affect relationships with factions and even the ending of the game. The story itself is rich and morally gray. You encounter betrayal, survival struggles, and tough decisions that test how you approach the world. Unlike many modern RPGs, it doesn't tell you what to do or force you down one path. Your actions shape the narrative. Even though the game uses pixel art graphics, the design is incredibly atmospheric. From misty forests to crumbling ruins, every environment feels lived in and dangerous. The visuals might not be flashy, but the style perfectly matches the dark, mysterious tone of the world. Mad Max. Mad Max is one of those games that didn't get nearly the attention it deserved when it came out, but it's actually a really solid, underrated open-world experience. It's set in the post-apocalyptic wasteland made famous by the movies, but the game does a great job of making you feel like you're surviving in it, not just running around completing missions. The world is huge and empty in a way that actually works. Deserts, canyons, ruined towns, and scavenger camps make exploration feel meaningful. You're constantly looking for scrap, fuel, and car parts, and that loop of scavenging, upgrading, and fighting keeps you engaged. It's a harsh, unforgiving world where everything matters, and that tension makes every choice feel real. The car, the magnum opus, is the heart of the game. Driving isn't just moving from one place to another, it's about customizing and upgrading your vehicle to survive the wasteland. You can add armor, weapons, engines, tires, and gadgets, and each upgrade changes how you approach combat. Car battles are chaotic but rewarding. Chasing down convoys, smashing through raiders, or taking out gang leaders requires a mix of speed, timing, and strategic use of your weapons. It's not flashy or over the top, it's just satisfying. You can feel the weight of the car when it crashes into enemies or barriers, and the way combat flows between driving and being on foot feels really natural. On foot, the game has solid melee combat. Max punches, grapples, and uses weapons in a way that feels heavy and satisfying. The system is simple, but it works for the world, letting you take down enemies strategically or just smash through them in a fight. The combination of car combat, exploration, and on-foot action keeps the gameplay varied so it never feels repetitive. There are also stealth elements like sneaking past enemy camps, but they're optional. The game lets you choose how to approach every situation, which is rare for open-world games. The story is simple but effective. Max doesn't talk much, but his journey through the wasteland shows a man struggling to survive in a brutal world. You're dealing with gangs, raiders, and corrupt warlords, and your actions shape how the world reacts to you. Even small choices like which convoys to attack or which camps to raid affect how the game plays out. The world itself is a character, full of danger, unpredictability, and moments that make you feel isolated and tense. Mad Max is underrated because it launched around bigger titles and people assumed it was just another movie tie-in, but it actually nails the feeling of being in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. The combination of car combat, upgrades, exploration, and survival elements makes it stand out. It's harsh, satisfying, and immersive in a way that only a few open-world games manage. The game might not be flashy, but every moment feels meaningful, every battle feels tense, and every upgrade makes your journey easier and more fun. If you missed it when it first came out, it's definitely worth checking out now. Spending time in the wasteland, upgrading your car, taking down gangs, and just surviving in a brutal world makes Mad Max one of the most satisfying, underrated games of its generation. Sunset Overdrive. Seriously, when people talk about games that were totally slept on, Sunset Overdrive has to be near the top of the list. It's a game that takes the whole end of the world thing and goes, nah, we're gonna have a party instead. The whole city is crawling with these gross mutant monsters called the OD, and instead of being all scared and serious, you're zipping around like a maniac, having the time of your life. The main thing you have to understand is that the ground is lava in this game. If you just stand around like you would in most shooters, you're gonna get overwhelmed and die super fast. The game forces you to be constantly moving, and that's where the magic is. You're not just walking or running, you're grinding on every railing, wire, or rooftop edge you can find, like a pro skater. You're wall running across buildings and bouncing off cars and trampolines like they're nothing. The controls feel so good that just getting from one point on the map to another is a full-on, awesome challenge. You're stringing together these moves, building up speed and a style meter, and you feel like a total acrobatic ninja with a machine gun. And speaking of guns, they are completely unhinged. This is the team that made the Ratchet & Clank games, so you know the weapons are gonna be crazy. Forget boring shotguns, you get a gun that shoots exploding teddy bears, a freeze gun that pops enemies like ice cubes, and a crazy turret that fires vinyl records. These weapons get more powerful the more you use them, and your style meter unlocks things called amps, which give you temporary superpowers, like setting off explosions every time you bounce, or having tornadoes shoot out of your weapon. It's non-stop, colorful chaos. Plus, the whole attitude of the game is just fun. It knows it's a video game. The characters constantly make jokes about quests, collectibles, and respawning. When you die, you don't just fade to black. You come back in these hilarious, quick animations that reference other movies and games. The style is super bright and punk rock, which is a nice change from the usual grim, dark apocalypse. It's got hours and hours of that great, energetic single-player action that people really miss. If you want a game that makes you smile while you're destroying hundreds of monsters, you absolutely have to pick up Sunset Overdrive. Until then, this is a really beautifully pixel art game, and at the first glance might seem like a cozy slice of life sim kind of game, and yeah, on the surface it's about a high school kid named Mark Borja who lives in the Philippines. You basically play through his life, trying to finish your homework at the last minute, hanging out with your friends, dealing with a crush, and just being a normal teenager. He lives alone a lot because his parents work far away, so you get this really real, grounded feeling of what his life is like. It's got this super nice pixel art style, but the way way they use the camera and the setting makes it feel super modern and cinematic. But here is where things get interesting and why you need to play it. All this normal high school stuff is happening a few months after this massive global catastrophe called The Ruling messed up the world, and Mark and some of his friends start having these crazy moments of deja vu. They get these flashes where their memories feel unreliable and the world starts to look weird and glitchy for a second. It quickly stops being just about high school drama and turns into a deep emotional mystery about memory, loss, and maybe even different timelines smashing into each other. The game is really smart about how it tells a story. You spend a lot of time on Mark's phone, texting your friends with dialogue options, checking out a fake social media feed, and seeing news reports about the world being weird. You get to see his thoughts as he's typing and deleting messages, which is just so real. It's the kind of game that handles big feelings about grief and growing up in a way that's totally honest and hits you right in the chest. It's slow to start because it really wants you to get to know Mark and his friends, but when the mystery starts kicking in, you are completely hooked. And trust me, when you finally get to the end, you'll be thinking about the twists and turns for a long time. If you like games that focus on a really moving story and believable characters, you need to add Until Then to your list. It's more of an interactive story than a crazy action game, but it's amazing. Prey 2017. This is honestly one of the most interesting sci-fi games of the decade. You play as Morgan Yu aboard the Talos 1 space station, a massive futuristic research facility orbiting Earth, and the way the game lets you explore it is one of its strongest points. The station is full of hidden rooms, labs, maintenance areas, and abandoned offices, and every corner has something that makes you curious, a piece of story, a note, or a tool that can help you survive. It doesn't hold your hand, which makes the exploration feel real. You're constantly thinking about how to approach enemies, where to go next, and how to use the resources around you. The gameplay is what really makes Prey special. The aliens, called Typhon, are smart and dangerous, and the game encourages creative problem solving. You can fight them directly, use traps, or manipulate the environment to your advantage. The game gives you powers called neuromods that let you do things like climb walls, hack machines, or even mimic objects, and experimenting with these powers is extremely satisfying. Every choice in combat can feel meaningful, and the freedom the game gives you to approach situations in multiple ways is rare. You can sneak, hack, shoot, or use your powers, and each method completely changes how encounters play out. I think many people wrote it off as just another sci-fi shooter, but it's more than that. It combines Metroidvania-style exploration, RPG elements, and immersive sim mechanics into a cohesive, tense experience. The story itself is layered and morally gray. You're discovering what's happening on Talos 1, questioning who you can trust, and uncovering secrets about yourself. The writing, environmental storytelling, and audio cues all make the station feel alive, like a character in itself. Prey is also incredibly replayable. Depending on which powers you choose, which areas you explore first, or how you handle the Typhon, your experience can feel completely different. The tension, the mystery, and the sense of isolation are constantly present, making every playthrough unique. It's not flashy or over the top, but it's smart, detailed, and immersive, and the freedom the game gives you makes it stand out in the genre. If you missed it when it first came out, Prey is worth going back to now. It's a brilliant mix of exploration, combat, and choice, and it's one of the smartest, most underrated games of its generation. Metro Series. The Metro series is one of those franchises that never got as much mainstream attention as it deserves, but it's easily one of the best story-driven shooters out there. Set in a post-apocalyptic Russia after a nuclear war, the games put you in the shoes of Artyom, a survivor navigating the dark, dangerous tunnels of the Moscow Metro and the ruined world above. What makes the series stand out is the atmosphere. It's oppressive, tense, and immersive in a way few games manage. You're constantly aware of the threat around you, whether it's mutant creatures, hostile humans, or the radioactive wasteland above. The world feels real, dangerous, and lived in, and the storytelling is subtle, letting the environment and encounters tell you a lot without needing to spell everything out. Gameplay in Metro is a mix of survival, stealth, and combat. Ammo is scarce, so you can't just shoot everything in sight. Sometimes you have to sneak past enemies or plan your attacks carefully. The guns feel heavy and satisfying, and crafting your own ammo or modifying weapons adds depth without making it complicated. The games also balance tense, slow sections and dark tunnels with bigger, more open combat sequences above ground. The feeling of going from a claustrophobic tunnel to a bombed out city while mutants roam around is incredible, and it keeps every moment unpredictable. What makes the Metro series underrated is that it often gets overshadowed by bigger shooters, but it has a depth that's rare. The stories are personal, the characters feel real, and the choices you make in some of the games affect how the story unfolds. On top of that, the world building is amazing. The tunnels, the ruined stations, the little communities trying to survive, all of it makes you care about the environment in a way few games achieve. You're not just running and shooting, you're surviving, scavenging, and experiencing a world that could actually feel this brutal and unforgiving. The series also nails pacing. It mixes quiet, suspenseful exploration with intense combat and occasional eye-stick set pieces, so you never really know what's coming next. And even though the main focus is survival and story, there's a lot of room for replaying sections differently, experimenting with stealth, or trying different approaches in combat. Metro is a series that doesn't try to be flashy or mainstream. It's focused, tense, and atmospheric, and that's what makes it special. If you missed it when the first games came out, the Metro series is absolutely worth diving into now because it's one of the smartest, most immersive, and underrated shooter experiences of the past decade.
So you got me, you damned heretics.
The Invincible. This one is a super cool, old school sci-fi adventure that I bet most people miss completely. If you've ever wished you could actually walk around inside one of those awesome retro sci-fi book covers from the 1960s, this is your chance. The whole style of the game is called Atom Punk, and it's gorgeous. Think chunky, brightly colored metal tools, big, bulky helmets, and all the gear looks like something NASA would have built 50 years ago if they had way more budget and imagination. It's a totally fresh look that you don't see in games today, which is usually all sleek silver and black. You play as a scientist named Yasna, and you wake up on a completely alien planet called Regis 3. The problem is your crew is missing, and you can't remember exactly what happened. So your main job is to explore this strange, dusty, and lonely planet to find your teammates and figure out the mystery of what wiped out another much bigger ship that was here before you. This isn't a game where you shoot things or jump over lasers. It's a narrative adventure, which means it's all about the story and the atmosphere. It's slow and thoughtful, but that's a good thing because it builds this incredible feeling of being totally alone and small in this massive unknown universe. The main gameplay is exploring and using all your cool retro gadgets. You've got these big mechanical binoculars and trackers that look like toys, but they are super important for finding clues. You're always talking to the astrogator Novik on the radio, and the voice acting and their conversations are what really pull you through the game. They talk about science, philosophy, and what it means to be human in a way that is just really smart and interesting. The mystery on Regis 3 is deep, and it gets really intense. It's based on a classic book by a famous Polish author, and it's all about humans messing with things they don't understand. The game is all about making tough choices that really affect what happens, and there are a bunch of different endings you can get. If you want a slow burn mystery that has amazing visuals and makes you think, The Invincible is one you definitely need to play. It's truly a hidden gem.
What is there to understand? We have to destroy it.